Mahantesh Sabarad as well now joining in on the show to share his market views. Mahantesh, hi there. Good afternoon. Let's talk about this leadership that we're seeing within the banks. And clearly, it seems like it's not just the usual suspects which are driving the markets higher, but the sectoral churn that is fairly evident. Do you believe that this is likely a trend that will continue?
Thank you for having me. I think the trend for this banks that we are seeing today has got to do with what we saw with the results of HDFC Bank announced over the weekend. You would have noticed that one of the key highlights of the result was that not only was there an advance growth, there was also a reduction in the NPAs. Now, the reduction in NPAs, and we have been talking about this for quite some time, the reduction in NPAs has been due to the forbearance that has been announced or the moratorium that has been announced by the RBI, and which has been in a way also taken cognizance of by the Supreme Court. So the banking performance, therefore, today in terms of the stock performance is reflecting this view that says that NPAs, at least for the time being, for the banks, will be pushed ahead. Q2 won't be affected by too much of NPAs as far as the balance sheet is concerned. And therefore, you will have a possibility of growth. HDFC Bank delivered a solid growth in terms of its advances. If I'm right, it was somewhere around 16%. No, advances was actually 19%, and NII growth was somewhere around 16%. So if you have growth with low NPAs coming in, these stocks will have value in them.
That's the big news on DHFL this afternoon. Just taking a look at some of the other movers. Mahantesh, ICICI today 5%, Axis 4%. The banks are looking pretty good. We've been discussing this for a while and how the overall, of course, we all know the banks have been underperforming. We're watching out for a host of earnings this week, kicking off with an HDFC Bank. But do you think the markets perhaps been factoring in a better than expected commentary this time around, given what we've seen from HDFC over the weekend?
Yeah, I think that is what I primarily said a little while ago. You would have noticed that there's been an all-round performance as from HDFC Bank for the Q2. Although from a growth perspective, Q2 has slightly slackened relative to the Q1. The growth rates were better in Q1 compared to what we have seen in Q2. Nevertheless, the good part of the result has been that the balance sheet has strengthened. I think the overall balance sheet has grown by something like 22%. That said, most of the banks, therefore, will be able to put out better Q2 results. That is the expectation that the market is now building in. There was pessimism some time ago in terms of what would happen for the banks when it comes to NPAs. Are we going to see expansion in margins? Are we going to see sustained growth in advances? So I think all those questions are in a way been answered by the results of HDFC Bank, and therefore the other set of banks are now are adjusting to that fact, and the expectations are getting upgraded.
Mahantesh, I know we've spoken about banks at length, but I want to get your take from the broader market names, again, from the smaller banks. If there are any that would be on your radar, would you just stick to the frontliners, or would you actually look beyond, got names like a Federal Bank that are moving today, Central Bank of India is up 10%, RBL. I mean, there's a host, but anything that you would look at?
So not within the bank space, but you can look at some in the NBFC space. Last time we had talked about how you should stick to the large names within the NBFC space as well. So that is where we would focus on. You have leaders within the NBFC space. In consumer financing, you have a leader like Bajaj Finance. In automobile financing, you have a leader like M&M Finance. So some of these companies can do relatively better, because what we have seen thus far is, as the economy has been recovering, I think the personal loan segment has been doing relatively better. Look at how automobile sales have recovered. There's a sharp recovery even on a year-on-year basis for automobiles. One may argue and say that this is inventory buildup, but But nevertheless, such strong growth tells you that there will be financing arrangement that will also start kicking in. Something similar is happening with consumer durable companies. Something similar is happening with even FMCG companies. So there's a sharper than expected kind of recovery happening. And therefore some of the financing names, the non-bank financing names, will also do well. But if you do want to look at the smaller set of banks, then perhaps a couple of names do come to mind. IDFC First is one of them, to even perhaps an RBL bank. But let me say that this is purely from a sectoral observation point of view, that as the tide rises, some of the boats also get lifted. So we should see some of the smaller private sector banks also do well, relatively speaking.
Okay, just want to look at the rest of the markets then, and amongst the gainers within the broader universe, remember the mid and the small caps are holding out by about 0.6% this afternoon, and you do have leadership coming in from the likes of Amber. Take a look at Central Bank, BOB, Bank of Maharashtra. Something like DMart is active at about 2019. You've got RBL Bank, DCB, BHEL, as well as Aditya Birla Fashion, Nestle and Hindustan Zinc. Those are some of the buzzers in today's trading session. Mahantesh, wanted to get in your take as to how exactly you've read into the trickle of earnings that has come in so far, particularly within the IT space, and what your expectations are as to where we could potentially see the hits and misses going forward.
The IT space has begun really well. The results were quite strong. I would say there's been an upgrade in guidance from most of them. We saw Wipro upgrade their guidance. We saw Infosys upgrade their guidance. Not only that, we also have a huge payout coming in from these IT companies in the form of buybacks. Typically, these buybacks happen every second year or so. So this, if the companies have chosen this year as the buyback year, that tells you a lot about their confidence in terms of the payout that they will do. The confidence comes from large deal wins. So IT sector has kicked off the result season quite well. And I would say even the bank's result season has been kicked off well by the results posted by HDFC Bank. So far, the results have come in quite on the better side, better than the expected side, particularly on the larger companies, particularly of the biggest names, simply because I think you also mentioned there is a market share gain phenomenon that is happening across the board. The smaller set of businesses are really facing difficulties, and it is the larger businesses who are really are doing well, and that is getting seen in the way we are seeing some numbers come in. Result seasons are actually giving that stamp on this phenomenon. They tell you that market share gain phenomena is getting entrenched.
Right. Okay. Mahantesh, there's not been a single day where we have not discussed Bharti, or a single session I've asked you that what's gone wrong with Bharti. So let me ask you again. The crack in Bharti now is perhaps which has mesmerized everyone. This is one telecom or a digital play which has gone back to its pre-COVID level, whereas world has moved towards left, Bharti has moved towards right. Why is that?
I think what was happening was that long time back we were discussing the difficulties that Vodafone was facing in the telecom market. Over a period of time, what has happened is that Vodafone has not only strengthened itself, it has rebranded itself. So the people or the market participants who were really writing of Vodafone and therefore assuming that there will be a market share gain for both Jio as well as Bharti Airtel, are now seeing that perhaps Vodafone may not necessarily lose its market share in a big manner. The rebranding that has come about for Vodafone is a big thing, I would say, apart from the financial strengthening that has happened over a period of time. If you notice on the balance sheets of most of these telecom companies, they have been battling the government on the AGR dues, right? So, but what they have done is on the balance sheet, they have provided a substantial portion of that money already. So worst comes to worst, they are well prepared for a from a balance sheet perspective, not from a cash perspective. They are well prepared from a balance sheet perspective to meet any eventuality related to, let's say, the AGR dues. And then you have this upcoming 5G phenomenon happening where it is assumed that perhaps Bharti Airtel is on a weaker wicket when it comes to the rollout of 5G network. So all in all, while this phenomenon has played out over the last 9-10 months or so, I tend to believe the stock has discounted far too much of this negativity that has come in. The negativity coming in from the positivity of Vodafone. So I would reckon perhaps Bharti will soon recover as well.
Mahantesh, should one get excited with HDFC Bank numbers? Could that be the harbinger or the canary in the coal mine of what other private banks could do?
Yes, I did say so because, what was surprising in the result was that the overall NPA levels being low, there has been growth. The substantial growth we see in advances, the balance sheet strengthening, and the continuing deposit growth tells me that the bank has done well for it, not only for itself, but as a sector. It tells you that there is fair degree of demand now coming in for the banking services, particularly on the personal loan side. HDFC is the strongest bank when it comes to the personal banking is concerned. So that is a phenomena which I will say, get repeatedly seen in the other results, other bank results. And yes, therefore, you can say that we have a rising tide here. The words you used was a canary in a coal mine. So yes, banks will do well.
Mahantesh, what is the right way to look at steel? Because our channel checks are indicating that the underlying steel prices have gone higher. When we speak to dealers, when we speak to distributors, when we speak to auto companies, all of them are using this Hindi terminology to say that lohe ke price mein bahut teji hai, which means steel prices have gone higher. Yet, with the exception of Tata Steel, none of the steel stocks are exhibiting a lot of momentum.
Yeah, I think you forget JSW is doing also very well on the stock market. So yes, the steel sector has been doing well, relatively better, and I wouldn't say that it's a phenomenon just about the prices that is strengthening. I think the way to look at steel stock is what is the conversion cost that is getting embedded in the prices. Conversion would mean necessarily the price of steel less the cost of producing it, and there that conversion cost is actually, I would say, expanding. The conversion margin is expanding, not conversion cost. The conversion margin is expanding, and that is getting duly rewarded in the way the stock prices are moving for the sector as a whole. Yes, the steel prices going up is also a phenomenon or linked to the general tariff levels going up, imposition of safeguard duties, a lot of government pressure not to bring in, let's say, Chinese kind of steel into the country. That is helping prices also remain steady or on an upward trajectory. It's the flat steel prices that are going up, not necessarily the long steel prices at this juncture. But when economy starts recovering, when infrastructure growth starts kicking in, you will see the long prices also go up, the long product prices go up.
All right, gentlemen, thanks for joining us. We're going to take a very quick break. We'll come back with more on the other side. CK will also be joining in. Do stay.